بل محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت دخل علي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال السلام عليك يا فاطمة فقلت عليك السلام قال إني أجد في بدني ضعفا فقلت له أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف فقال يا فاطمة ائتني بالكساء اليماني فغطني به فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله.
اللهم صل على محمد وآله.
فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولد الحسن عليه السلام قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه. قلت عليك السلام يا قرة عيني وتمرة فؤادي. فقال يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله تأذن لي ندخل معك تحت الكساء. فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي قد أذنت لك فدخل معه تحت الكساء.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولد الحسين عليه السلام قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال لي يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جد رسول الله. فقلت نعم إن جدك وافاك تحت الكساء. فدل الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء. فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي قد أذنت لك فدخل معهما تحت الكساء.
اللهم صل على محمد وآله.
فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جعفر وابن عمي رسول الله. فقلت نعم فهو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء. قال وعليك السلام يا أخي ووسيلي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء.
اللهم صل على محمد.
ثم أتيت نحو الكساء فقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء. قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء.
اللهم صل على محمد وآله.
فلما اكتمل جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ بي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إنا هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم محب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم. واجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد.
فقال الله عز وجل: يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال لي جبرائيل: يا رب ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل: هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها.
اللهم صل على محمد.
فقال جبرائيل: يا رب أتأذن لي نهبط إلى الأرض ليكون معهم سادسا؟ وقال الله: نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك: وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم، وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله عليه السلام: يا أمين وحي الله إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال الأمين: إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول: إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد.
فقال علي لأبيه: يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله: والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. وقال علي عليه السلام: إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال لي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله: يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيه المهموم إلا وفرج الله همه ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام: إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل
الفاتحة والصلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد. محمد وآل محمد بلندتر صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد.
ताइबानों का बयां किसको दूं अब लोरियां ढूंढती फिरती है मादर है मेरा असवर कहाँ तेरा झूला चल गया है मेरे तृष्णा दहाँ ढूंढती फिरती है मादर है मेरा असवर कहाँ खून भरा कुर्ता तेरा हाय वो भी छिन گیا خون بھرا کرتا تیرا ہائے وہ بھی چھن گیا اب جیوں کس کے سہارے پاس میرے کیا رہا زندگی ہے رائگاں عمر بھر ہوں نوحاں ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر ہے میرا اصغر کہاں ہائے وہ نازک گلا تین دن سے خشک تھا ہائے وہ نازک گلا تین دن سے خشک تھا بن کے موجے تیر نے وہ کس قدر زخمی کیا تر ہوئی خون سے زبان لے سکے نہ ہچکیاں ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر ہے میرا اصغر کہاں خالی جھولا دیکھ کر اے میرے نور نظر خالی جھولا دیکھ کر اے میرے نور نظر آنکھ بھر آتی ہے میری اور روتا ہے جگر سو گئے ہو تم کہاں چین پائے کیسے ماں ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر ہے میرا اصغر کہاں میں مسافر شام کی ختم حد آرام کی میں مسافر شام کی ختم حد آرام کی قید ہو کر جا رہی ہوں گرد ہے عالم کی بند چکی ہے راسیاں بند چکی ہے راسیاں ہم کہاں اب تم کہاں ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر ہے میرا اصغر کہاں میر کیا ریحان کیا جس نے یہ نوحہ سنا میر کیا ریحان کیا جس نے یہ نوحہ سنا اشک آنکھوں سے بہا کر اس نے رو رو کر کہا ہائے وہ اصغر کی ماں ہائے وہ اصغر کی ماں اف وہ تیرا امتحان ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر ہے میرا اصغر کہاں تیرا جھولا جل گیا اے میرے تشنا دہاں ڈھونڈتی پھرتی ہے مادر ہے میرا اصغر کہاں سلوات
اللهم صل على محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى محمد صلوات
سلام بھیجے درود بھیجے محمد وعلى وہ سجدار ہے جو تہے خنجر کیا جائے وہ سجدار ہے جو تہے خنجر کیا جائے وہ سجدار بندگی کی لاج جو رکھ لے وہ بندہ ہے جو تہے خنجر کی مت اور ماتھے کا پسینہ اور انبیاء سے کیا تقابل میرا مولا انبیاء سے کیا تقابل میرا مولا جو تہے خنجر کیا جائے وہ سجدار اس لیے چن کر ستارہ عرش سے بھیجا گیا کیونکہ زہرا کا در زہرا سے رشتہ ہے جو تہے خنجر کیا جائے وہ سجدار ہے غرق کر کے بدعتوں کو میرے آنسو ہر بار مفتیوں سے پوچھتے ہیں کوئی فتویٰ جو تہے خنجر کیا جائے وہ سجدار اس لیے آ کر پڑھائیں گے وہ عیسیٰ کو اس لیے آ کر پڑھائیں گے وہ عیسیٰ کو شیر مریم اور ہے اور شیر زہرا شیر مریم اور ہے اور شیر زہرا اور ہے جو تہے خنجر کیا جائے وہ سجدار اپنی پلکوں میں بچھاؤ فرش غم کے ساتھ اپنی پلکوں بھی اپنی پلکیں بھی بچھاؤ فرش غم کے ساتھ سب کا آنا اور ہے زہرا کا آنا اور سب کا آنا اور ہے زہرا کا آنا اور ہے جو کہے خنجر کیا جائے وہ سجدار شیر نے یہ الخما کے پہرداروں سے کہا اس پہ قبضہ ہو چکا اب کوئی دریا اور ہے جو کرے خنجر کیا جائے وہ سجدار القما عباس کے چلو کیا اندازہ نہ کر تجھ میں پانی ہی نہیں چلو تو گہرا اور ہے جو کہے خنجر کیا جائے وہ سجدار ہے شیر کہہ لیتے ہیں ہم بھی اے بلال کاظ مدح مولا میں مگر بھی سم کا لہجہ اور ہے جو کہے خنجر کیا جائے وہ سجدار بندگی کی لاج جو رکھ لے وہ بندہ اور ہے جو کہے خنجر کیا جائے
جزاک اللہ اللہ صلی
زینب سلام اللہ علیہ کی شہادت مسجد چندن ہے فاتحہ
محمد وآل محمد
عزیز و زینب مزتر کا ماتم ہے عزیز و زینب حیدر کا آج ماتم ہے علی کی لاڈلی دختر کا آج ماتم ہے غریب شاہ کی خواہر کا غریب شاہ کی خواہر کا آج ماتم ہے سکون قلب خدا کے حبیب کو دیجئے بہن کا پرسا حسین غریب بہن کا پرسا حسین غریب کو دیجئے دوبارہ خیر ہوئے جب کہ سید سجاد اسیر کرتے ہوئے شام لے چلے جلاد روانہ ساتھ ہوئی ہائے زینب ناشاد نبی کے روضہ اقدس پہ جا نبی کے روضہ اقدس پہ جا کہ شہید ہو گیا بھائی حسین نانا مگر نہیں ہے لینو کچھ مگر نہیں ہے لینو کچھ اے نانا یہ سن کے اٹھ کے گئی فاطمہ کے روضے پر لپٹ کے قبر سے کہنے لگی خستہ جگر اٹھو اٹھو میری اماں کی آئی ہے دختر اسیر ہو گیا پھر میرا اسیر ہو گیا پھر میرا تمام گھر کو اجاڑا مگر نہ چین آیا دوبارہ سید سجاد پر دوبارہ سید سجاد پر ستم ڈھایا سدائے نوحے زہرا لہد سے آنے لگی کسی نبی نے بھی ایسی جفا نہیں دیکھی نثار ماں تیری مظلومیت کے اے بیٹی تڑپ رہی ہوں میں میری طرف تڑپ رہی ہوں میں میری درد کی مائی میں ساتھ چلتی ہوں اے جان زینب مستر یہ دل دلانا تیرا قربان یہ دل دلانا تیرا قربان زینب مستر روانہ ہو گئی پھر سوئے شام باویلا خاموش روتے تھے چوتھے امام باویلا نہیں روانہ ہوئے تیز کام باویلا عزیز کرتے تھے ماتم تمام عزیز کرتے تھے ماتم تمام باویلا لکھا ہے راہ میں ایک منزل قریب آئی بدول زادی کی ہے قضا بدول زادی کی ہے قضا قریب آئی نظر خدا دی کی ناگاہ اس شجر پہ پڑی کہ اس نے دیکھا تھا فرق حسین ابن علی طرف کے ہائے حسینہ کہاں زمین پہ گری اٹھی سنبھل کے تو فریاد اٹھی سنبھل کے تو فریاد شجر سے کہاں ہے بھائی میرا اے شجر بتا جلدی حسین کے لیے روتی ہوں حسین کے لیے روتی ہوں بڑھا کلیجا گیا منہ کو تڑپ رہا تھا جگر زیارت شہر کو بلا پڑھی رو کر نماز پڑھنے لگی پھر قریب تیرے شجر ابھی اٹھایا نہ تھا ہائے ابھی اٹھایا نہ تھا ہائے ہائے ستم سے بیچا ابن تمیم نے مارا لہو مسلح پہ بے کس کا بہ لہو مسلح پہ بے کس کا بہ گیا علی کی طرح سے زینب کا سر تو نیم ہوا زمین لرز گئی عرش عظیم کہاں اٹھا سنی زمانے نے فریاد سید شہداء پکارنے لگی آ کر مزار پکارنے لگی آ کر مزار سے غریب سوگ نشیب خطا کو قتل کیا شکین دختر مشکل کشا شکین دختر مشکل کشا کو قتل کیا
محمد وعلى محمد صلوات
زندہ سے جب رہا ہوئے سادات کربلا ہائے مانے لپٹ کے خبریں سکینہ پہ دی صدا اٹھو سکینہ چلے کربلا اٹھو سکینہ چلے کربلا چھوٹی سی تربت پہ ماں نے کہا اٹھو سکینہ چلے کربلا زندہ سے جاتا ہے اب قافلہ اٹھو سکینہ چلے کربلا مجھے شہزادی تمہاری قسم نہ رکھوں گی زندہ سے باہر قدم चलें करबला मुझे याद असग़र की है बेकसी लहद से वो मैयत निकाली गई अकेले में रहने न दूंगी तुम्हें भरोसा नहीं शामियों का कोई रहते हैं चारों तरफ आशियाँ उठो सकीना चले करबला ये शामी कहाँ तुमको बहलाएंगे तुम्हारी लहद पर नहीं आएंगे रहेगा अंधेरा ही जिंदान में हरम जब यहाँ से चले जाएंगे कौन आएगा फिर जलाने दिया उठो सकीना चले करबला उठो सकीना चले करबला कहानी पदर की सुनाऊंगी मैं अगर नींद आई सुनाऊंगी मैं अकेले गनाज़े पे बैठोगी तुम्हें साथ अपने बिठाऊंगी मैं अब तो रसन में न होगा गला उठो सकीना चले करबला छोटी सी तुरबत पैमाने कहा उठो सकीना चले करबला
मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलवात Mu'minin Mu'minat, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Just a few announcements before I request Maulana to come and start this speech. For tomorrow's Majlis, we are commemorating the Shahadat of Bibi Zainab Salamullahi for this entire weekend. So tomorrow's Majlis will be also at 3 p.m. Dr. Ali Raza Muswi and Zahra Muswi requesting all of you to please join us tomorrow at 3 p.m. sharp, inshallah. Maulana Bilal will be addressing that Majlis. Monday night, we are having a Majlis commemorating the wafat of our Prophet and Imam Hassan alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And that Majlis is Monday night at 7:45 p.m. Maulana Ruhollah Wahidi will be addressing that Majlis. So please join us on Monday night at 7:45 p.m. inshallah. Next weekend on September 7th, Saturday, we have our third annual Youth Majlis. So please have your children sign up for it. Register. Brother Hadi Raza will be registering all the kids. So please do that this week if you can. And inshallah, we'll have boys and girls Majlis inshallah next Saturday. And that Majlis will be at 1 p.m. at Zohar prayers inshallah. So please join us next Saturday for that. And then one last announcement for Maulana's speech is that on weekend of September 28th, we are having Muslim Congress camp. And this year is at Bethel Haim. So please register online. If you don't have the link, please let me know. We'll send you the link. Maulana Abbas Ali Akibullah and Maulana Ruhollah Wahidi will be in that camp. That's a 2 days camp at Bethel Haim, inshallah. We are honored to have Maulana Bilal Hussain for this weekend. He's been really busy this weekend, and alhamdulillah, we'd like to thank him for taking time out for us, and he's traveling a lot. Thank you, Maulana. Really appreciate it. And inshallah, with loud salawat, please welcome Maulana. Allah.
رحم الله من يقرأ سورة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. من عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى وهو مؤمن فلنحيينه حياة طيبة ولنجزينهم أجرهم بأحسن ما كانوا يعملون. آمنا بالله، صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Your second salawat for love of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. اللهم صل على محمد. And your loudest salawat for ta'jeel faraj sahib al-asr wa zaman. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بذكرنا المسائب آل Muhammad. May Allah increase in our reward for commemorating the difficulties of Ali Muhammad. Yesterday we began a discussion that talked about the significance of the events of Karbala in preserving the message of Islam. In the continuation of that discussion is that we addressed how from Adam ila al-Khatam that Allah had selected His messengers to ensure that Hidayah and guidance was presented to humanity. One of the things that we realize as we look at all of these hadis that were sent, all of these guides that were sent for humanity, all of them are men. When we look at, for example, even the story of Karbala, we see the sacrifice of the men that's presented. One of the logical questions that presents itself is, what was the role of women, if any, in preserving the message of Islam? When we want to understand how, for example, we see women in their association to Islam, it's one of the fair questions that we have to ask, especially considering the culture and the times that we live in. My point in saying is that the culture and time that we live in presents in our culture that men and women should have equality in their matters and that both are equal at performing similar, if not the same, tasks. This opinion about the role of women in society and how, for example, society should give equality between the genders is what we call an ethnocentric perspective. An ethnocentric perspective refers to the idea that I look at my culture and my lifestyle as being the correct representation that all of the other people should follow, and that the way I live my life, if someone doesn't live their life according to the way I do, that they're wrong and my perspective is the correct ideology. Ethnocentrism is one of the cultural landmarks of the American society, whether you take a look at it because of the geographical isolation or, for example, because of their access to resources. The American culture frequently presents itself as being the ideal culture by which society should measure itself. However, Islam does not have an ethnocentric perspective, nor does it validate one particular perspective. Islam is a religion that was established 1400 years ago, and the culture and the lifestyle it established encompasses and allows for every situation of humanity and society until the Day of Judgment. Meaning that there may be elements that, for example, in our society and culture that don't align with the values of Islam. That doesn't mean Islam is wrong. Rather, that means that the path of Islam is all-encompassing, that our lifestyle can be Islamic, and other lifestyles that disagree with us still represent the values of Islam. I'll give you an example. You guys okay? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala. Even ethnocentrism itself is a relative concept that is relegated to the time and experience of the people of that generation. Meaning that something that we believe to be correct today doesn't mean that it was correct before, or that it'll even be considered correct in the future. So hence, judging a religion by ethnocentrism doesn't quite fit. An example of this presents itself in the discussion around the concept of slavery. Today, as a society, we look at the idea of slavery and we say, bad, very bad. It's horrible. Look back 200 years. And slavery was something that was good, very good. And it was considered a source of status in society. People looking at the shifting process of ideology and change now turn their attention to the religion of Islam and see that within the religion of Islam, there is a discussion about the concept of slavery, and the laws pertaining to slavery are still present. And some people find this characteristic or this item to be present in the religion of Islam and find, how could it be a religion of God if it allows for such an institution to exist? The ethnocentric, relative ethnocentric experience is that anything that agrees with slavery, bad. To the extent where even the people that this country used to honor, now they question, should we honor this person if they had slaves in their time? So the contemporary opinion is that this is a bad thing, and anywhere that it exists is bad, and anything that allows it is bad. However, Islam's perspective and Islam's view of the world allowed for something like slavery to exist, but not the way American slavery or European slavery existed. Slavery within the religion of Islam gave the person the right to buy their freedom, gave the person free time and an ability to own things and have possessions, gave them the ability to use their time to work for other institutions along with whoever they were indentured to at that moment in time, and created processes by which slavery could come to an end in the family, in the lineage, and in society as a whole. But it didn't force the process of refusing this item to exist. One of the philosophies of why it persisted and why Islam still keeps this doctrine is a system of social development. Let me explain what I mean by that. Islam is a religion that did have war in its initiation, and consequence of war is victory and loss. The question is, what do you do with the loser? You can do a few things, right? You can kill them all, and then you're responsible for the murder of all these people because they submitted. They came and they said, we surrendered. But if I leave them, then it's possible they'll come back to me with another army because, well, they're my enemy. Give them an opportunity, they'll be my enemy again. 2, I can turn them into prisoners of war. And then it becomes a responsibility of the governance that has now captured these individuals to take resources from the common society and apply them to the prisoner of war. And insist that now this person gets to be fed, kept, and stored, because we can't send them out again because they'll become our enemy. And now I have an obligation that instead of me taking care of my community, I'm now taking care of the enemy's community because I can't let them out and be enemies, and they won't join me, so how do I do this? Islam's perspective was a third aspect of indoctrinating them and inculcating them into the society by making them such individuals that were forced to commit to and to live in this environment. So that now they were exposed to Muslim culture, they were exposed to Muslim families, they were exposed to the values of Islam, and they were treated with a level of humanity, but they did not have the freedom to leave and go about and do what they wanted to. This consequence of its existence served the benefit of bringing about social change and incorporating in enemy generations into Islamic generations. Now, is it relevant in today's society? No. And the same thing we said, Islam's purpose is to encompass every culture and society from 1400 years ago until the Day of Judgment. A law that exists within Islam doesn't mean that I have to apply that law today in my life, but that there is a generation and a time where this law serves a benefit from the time of the Holy Prophet until the Day of Judgment. So meaning that just because the code of law exists doesn't mean that its application has to be fit today, but rather that there is some time and place where these codes of law fit, and its existence does not hinder the progress of society. Rather, it creates a limiter that should society falter in its progress in improving and go backwards, it can never go further than this particular point, and values cannot go lower than this. Hence the conversation around the idea of even the age of marriage. Some other people who bring criticism against Islam say, how is it possible that someone at the age of 9 could be married in the religion of Islam? And what they do is they use their ethnocentric perspective of looking at a 9-year-old today and say, how does that religion allow for this to be applicable to my family? The truth is, it's not applicable to your family. And there is no cleric in his right mind who would go through the process of allowing someone to proceed with the marriage of a 9-year-old. But in the history and the timeline of humanity, if there is a time where people live in a different lifestyle, different structure, where appropriateness could be different, Allah set a bare minimum level that it can never be lower than this, but it can be higher than this. So these rules within Islam, their purpose and their identity was not necessarily to say that this has to be applied in every generation, every time, but rather that every generation, every time, there is a bare minimum that you cannot cross. So for example, there is what we call permissible, and there is that which we call better. That if society entitles itself to something better and better education, that doesn't conflict with the law of Islam. Rather, the law of Islam is the bare minimum that society cannot go worse than. Understanding this philosophy of the religion of Islam, when we look at differences in gender roles in Islam, some people looking at the laws of Islam in an ethnocentric perspective imagine that our society's view of equality between gender is something that Islam does not allow to exist, and that's not true. Islam allows that should you choose to live your life in equality, it's possible. But Islam believes in equity, not equality. The significance of that statement is to understand that gender roles are different, they are intended to be different, but a difference in gender role does not create an inferior gender. Which is why, when we look at the fundamentals of Islam, for example, in Surah Al-Nahl, the verse that we began our discussion with, verse number 97, from the 16th chapter of the Holy Quran, Allah gives an explanation and He says, "Man amila salih min dhakarin aw untha, فَوَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَلَنَحْيَنَّهُ حَيَاةً طَيِّبَةً وَنَجْزِيَنَّهُ أَجْرَهُم بِأَحْسَنِ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ." Allah makes a statement that demonstrates the reality of the religion of Islam. And He says that whoever does a righteous deed, whether they be a man or a woman, and they are a mu'min, وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ, we shall certainly give them a life of goodly, pure life, and definitely we will pay them a recompense in proportion to the reward for the best of what they used to do. This statement in the Quran, Allah is establishing that the religion of Islam is the same. Whether you are a man or a woman, if you do good and keep faith, you are entitled to a reward. And you will receive the best of the reward for the actions that you perform. This explanation tells us, and we know this, that when we look at the philosophy of faith, when we look at aqaid, tawheed, adal, nabuwat, imamat, ma'ad, they are the same whether you're a man or a woman. When we look at the furu'id deen, we see that the actions of Islam are the same whether you're a man or a woman. But the application of how they are applied may have a difference. That difference does not mean superiority and inferiority. It implies a difference. The same way in many institutions in Islam, there are differences, but they don't necessarily indicate that one is superior and the other is inferior. Everybody's okay? You guys want an example?
Yeah.
Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala A shaheed is someone who does not receive a kafan, does not receive ghusl. He's buried the way he is shaheed. It's a great thing to achieve. But does it necessarily mean that a shaheed is better than someone who didn't die shaheed? No. The proof of this is between the example of Hazrat Hamza and the Holy Prophet. Hazrat Hamza is shaheed. He wasn't given ghusl and kafan. Does that mean he's better than our Holy Prophet? Our Prophet was given ghusl and kafan when he died. The example is not inferiority and superiority, it's difference of ahkam. That Allah has appointed different rules and responsibilities. They don't necessarily imply that one is superior, the other is inferior. No, superiority and inferiority, Allah has established that whoever does good will receive the recompense of that good, will receive the rewards that are best of what they used to. This is what Allah gives superiority on, which is why in the Quran we say, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. That the best amongst you in your society are the pious. That's what the difference and the measure of success and superiority is, not the other visible elements that you can see that create differences amongst people. Differences that exist because of the consequences of reality. That in reality, only the apparent is addressed. What is hidden underneath is reserved for the day of judgment. Looking at this structure, when we ask the question that what was the role of women in the preservation of the message of Islam, do women have a role within society serving the religion of God? Absolutely. But their role will be different than the role of men. Which is why one of the questions that's often asked, or is asked, is 124,000 Anbiya. أَوَلَيْسَ فِيهِمْ نِسَاء? Were there no women amongst them? This question is even present today in society, that we have marja'iyat. أَوَلَيْسَ فِيهِمْ النِّسَاء? Why are there no women amongst them? This question itself implies that there should be equality, not equity. And that's a mistake. Allah has differentiated the roles and responsibilities, but He has not reduced the reward that each person can attain. Rather, the reward that you can attain with Allah is not reliant upon the fact that were you given this title or that title, but rather the goodness of your deeds. Understanding that there is no women in prophethood, no imam is a woman. Why? There are a number of elements that we can execute to understand this concept. If we begin with, for example, the concept of marja'iyya. Maraja. Why don't we have women as maraja? First and foremost, agree or disagree with me. Being a marja is wajib on every man. Disagree. It's not wajib on every man to be a marja, otherwise we'd all be in trouble, myself included. Rather, marja'iyya is a mustahab action, where Allah says, وَلَوْلَا نَفَرًا مِنْ كُلِّ فِرْقَةٍ طَائِفَةً لِيَتَفَقَّهُوا فِي الدِّينِ. Even thinking about and being a scholar is not mandatory upon every person. Rather, one from each nation should take on this responsibility to care for their nation. It's one of the mustahabbat. It's a recommended action. To go and learn about your faith and become the one who studies the faith and teaches his community. It's mustahab, not wajib. The role of the marja is to answer the needs of the people, to ensure that someone within the community has done their research and can teach the religion of Islam. When it comes to the role of women, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't have scholarship. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't study the religion of Islam. They absolutely should. But look at the attribute of a marja, that he has to make himself accessible to all of the members of society. He has to make himself available to speak to every person who may be in need. But a woman has to preserve first and foremost the wajibat, which is hijab. But to fulfill this mustahabbat, I would have to make a sacrifice of executing my hijab correctly, to keep privacy from the non-mahram. When you want to understand the importance of this, there is a statement of Sayyidah Fatima Zahra, salamu where she elaborates and says, for the hijab of a woman, the best is that she not see a non-mahram and a non-mahram not see her. That preservation of hijab, which is a priority for a mu'minah, to enter into the public field and to take on that responsibility would create a sacrifice in that role of fulfilling that hijab correctly. That would be ta'arud bayn al-wajib wal-mustahab. Doesn't mean a woman shouldn't be a scholar, but rather the fact that being that scholar and making herself accessible by taking on the title and responsibility of the authority of Allah to ensure all of humanity has access to Islam would come in conflict. What? In terms of possessing the level of knowledge, there's no harm in it. As a matter of fact, throughout the history of Islam, women have possessed that level of knowledge. To the extent where when we talk about Allama Hilli, who became a marja, a mujtahid at the age of 9 and marja in his youth, in his house, famously it's reported that over 12 women of his family were mujtahideen. They had the ability to do istinbat and know the religion of Islam. Hence, in him came about this attribute that he was an expert in the religion.
Possessing knowledge is not a limiting attribute. It's welcome to everybody. The establishment of the title that you become the example that humanity has to go to is where it conflicts with the role of hijab with women. Similarly to the concept of nabuwat, that nabuwat being the element in the representation that has to be known about, exposed in society constantly, and being the example by which humanity learns of how to establish, all of humanity learns how to establish the religion of Allah, it becomes difficult. Today when we talk about the sunnah of our Holy Prophet, we talk about that we saw the Prophet perform this action. We learn from the Prophet by sitting with him and eating with him. The people that give us these explanations are not his family members. They're all members of society. The sunnah of the Prophet that's established today is upon people who watched the Prophet constantly and came back with instruction that this is how the Prophet would sit, stand, talk, speak, and all these actions. If we put a woman into that position, we would say that it conflicts with the concept of what Allah made wajib upon her to perform in hijab. Now, this doesn't mean that women did not attain a great status in the eyes of Allah, that women did not serve in the religion of Islam. That's not true. Women throughout the history served for the religion of Islam and attained great heights in status. Shall I give you an example? Everybody's okay?
Yep.
Not lost anyone? Sallu ala Muhammad. A Nabi is someone who receives wahi, receives revelation from Allah. Bibi Maryam received wahi. When she was told that go out and she was given the instruction, the Malaika spoke to Maryam. When we see, for example, the mother of Nabi Musa, when she was given instruction to put her son into a cradle and to send him down, she received wahi. Wahi was also given to women. Women were also given a high status within the history of Islam. Hence, we have a surah called Maryam. The discussion and attribute of Bibi Maryam is established in the Quran. When we see, for example, even Sayyidah Fatima Zahra, her azamat and great status, that she too receives wahi. After the death of the Prophet, it's narrated that Allah, to comfort Sayyidah Fatima, sent wahi with Jibreel to Bibi Fatima. And there's Mushaf Fatima, which is a book that our sixth Imam would describe that is 3 times the length of the Quran, but contains nothing of the Quran, but rather has the affairs of what happened in the past and what happened and what will happen in the future. That was given to Bibi Fatima as a revelation to her. So many women also received the wahi. They had this status and the ability to represent the religion of Islam, but in the capacity that was appropriate. Today, to understand this difference between equality and equity. Equality is that everybody gets the same. If a man can do it, a woman can do it. Islam doesn't promote this concept. It allows it to exist, but it doesn't promote this concept. Rather, Islam says there is equity. The reward with Allah will be the same, but the process of achieving it will be unique to each of the genders. Not unlike today. Put in front of me a doctor and an engineer. Great professionals. Very capable. Have great status in society. But can a doctor build a bridge? Can an engineer change somebody's valve in their heart? No. The roles are different. The status is the same. In the same aspect, when we see differences between men and women in society and in Islam, don't look at one as the aspect of inferiority or superiority. Rather understand that Allah has created equity, not equality. Shall we do another example? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala. In the concept of giving inheritance, Allah separates between the 2 genders and mentions that for every boy, he shall have the share of 2 females. Whatever one daughter receives, a son receives double. Some people came and said, dhulm, oppression. How could it happen that a girl receives? No. You have to understand that there is equity. That it's true, while the son may receive double the shares, everything that he receives has liability and responsibility. Meaning that if a man has wealth that he receives as inheritance, he can't keep it for himself. If he has a wife and children, it's wajib to give nafaqah. If he has parents that are remaining and alive, it is wajib for him to take care of them. All of these liabilities and responsibilities on whatever he receives, it's not his privately. He can't do with it what he wants. He has to fulfill all of his obligations. Whereas for a woman receives no liability. What she receives is she has no obligation to spend on her children, to spend on her spouse, to spend on her parents. Hence, what Allah did, while the difference in the amounts may be separate, the liability associated with it far favors the woman over the male. And this isn't me saying it. When the women came to our sixth Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad Imam Sadiq elaborates and he says, what the woman truly receives is far more than what the man receives. Because no one has a right on the possession of a woman, not even her children. But for a man, whatever he possesses, he has the obligation to take care of his children. He can't leave them home. He has the obligation for his wife and to give from whatever he possesses for his wife. He has an obligation to his family and relatives to fulfill the obligations that fit with him. So the resources the man may receive is double, maybe numerically or superior, but in terms of obligation are far inferior that he can have for himself. You can't. You'll violate the laws of Islam if you refuse to share with this or to spend upon your family. So Allah, when He gave more obligation, He gave more resources for the man to fulfill and to have access to. And where He gave a woman no obligation, He still gave her a share and gave her an equitable share that can be measured and given freely to her that no one can ask from her. In this way, we see that sometimes when we look at the apparent nature of something, we see it to be less than. But in reality, it is just as significant and important. When we look at, for example, now the Waqia of Karbala, understanding all of this prerequisite to the conversation, one may look and see that it was the men who sacrificed their lives, who stood on the battlefield, who went and offered their sacrifice for the sake of Imam Hussein. But it doesn't mean that the women were absent, but rather that the role of women was different. But just as important, the embodiment of this entire concept is Sayyidah Zainab. Sayyidah Zainab is Sharikat al-Hussein. When we look at the concept of what Imam Hussein offers in the field of Karbala for the preservation of Islam, Sayyidah Zainab doesn't play an inferior role in that relationship. Rather, she is the partner of Imam Hussein in that experience. And her role and responsibility is just as important and critical to make sure that the message of Islam persists, that the message of Islam remains. When we look at the story and the narration of what Aba Abdullah sacrifices, one of the things that we say that this Aba Abdullah is the wasi of all of the Anbiya, that the message and service of all of the Anbiya is completed by the actions of Imam Hussein. This was our conversation yesterday. We can go back to it, but we're going to proceed that this is an accepted fact at this point in time to continue the conversation. That whatever he offered and sacrificed was to ensure that all of the Anbiya's efforts remained and persisted on this earth. And which is why all of the Anbiya knew of the events of Karbala and wept over the events of Karbala and built an affiliation that they knew of what Imam Hussein would offer and they acknowledged and appreciated. And the same way that Aba Abdullah is the one who is the wasi of all of the message to ensure that the message persists, he is also the wasi of the masaib of the Anbiya as well. That whatever it is that the Anbiya have experienced, that it was completed in the message of Imam Hussein. And not just Imam Hussein, but Sayyidah Zainab, by being the partner of Imam Hussein in this affair, is also the wasi and the inheritor of the masaib of the Anbiya as well. Which is why we can see, if we were to look at the masaib of the Anbiya, we would find that their equal or greater was in the example of Sayyidah Zainab. To explain this, we'll mention from the Ulul Azm and explain this status with your loudest of salawat ala Muhammad. To show this status of Sayyidah Zainab, begin with Nabi Adam. Though he is not from the Ulul Azm, he is the first of the Anbiya. The masaib of Adam alayhi salam were one, that he was cast out from the garden. Then when he's cast out from that garden, Adam spends a portion of his life weeping over the experience of that he has been cast out from that place that was unique and special that Allah had created for him. One of the important points to note about this is that the garden that Adam is cast out of is not heaven that you and I call heaven. In Arabic, the word Jannah refers to garden. We refer to that heaven that Allah will reward us with as Jannah, but also that the word Jannah is used for gardens in other places. One of the attributes of that reward that is heaven is that one who enters it never leaves. This fundamental rule by itself tells us that where Adam was presented was not heaven such that it was the heaven that will be the reward of humanity. Because that would be then Allah violating His own rule to say that man cannot be cast out of heaven. Rather, what we say is that heaven that Adam was placed in was what we would call today, for example, in software terms, a sandbox, a preparation place where you test and prepare. That Adam, before he was given the authority on this earth, was put in a place for him to prepare for the responsibility he would inherit, and that through his action, he was cast out of that land of preparation and placed onto this earth without the added mercy of Allah of knowing and being well prepared for the obligation he had. That absence from that mercy is what Adam wept about, and they described that Adam wept so much of losing that mercy that Allah had given him, that tracks were formed on his face from the tears that he would cry. Adam was cast out from one garden, and he wept this much. Sayyidah Zainab is that one who was cast out of the garden of the haram of Rasulullah, who was the one who was in the presence of the Ahlul Bayt and Ahlul Kisa, and lost and was taken away from that position by the oppression of humanity, not by her actions. That even if you were to look and see that the night before Ashura, the lights of Ali Muhammad that surrounded Sayyidah Zainab, we would say are a piece of heaven. And that her removal from this place was her being cast out from that beautiful location, mercy of Allah, that was taken away from her. Further this, Adam is the one who loses his son Habil, and Habil is killed unjustly. Adam wept and was tried by the loss of one son. Sayyidah Zainab is that personality who says, I lost 18 members of my family. So we would say, the example in Sayyidah Zainab meets the azamat of Adam and goes beyond. Look further at Nuh. Nuh is known as Nuh because he wept for the way that his ummah abused him and would not listen to him. Nuh, Amir al-Mu'mineen describes, served his community for 950 years, and for 950 years at the abuse that they gave him, he wept. Imam Sadiq says the actual name of Nuh, Abdul Ghaffar, the servant of the one who is the forgiving. But because of his naha and his crying, he became known as Nuh, one who weeps. His ummah abused him for 950 years. But Nuh, they did not kill your children. They did not kill your family. They did not disrespect you by taking you as a prisoner. Sayyidah Zainab is that one who the ummah oppressed her in a way that even Nuh was not oppressed. That she is the inheritor of the one who was oppressed by the community and is oppressed greater than even Nuh. Next, we take a look at Ibrahim. Ibrahim from amongst the Ulul Azm, amongst all of the Anbiya, is second only to our Prophet. He's the father of the Anbiya. He's the father of the Abrahamic traditions. He has a great status that he possesses. No, Ibrahim is that one who Allah tests him and raises his status by asking him to sacrifice his son Ismail. But when it comes time for the sacrifice of Ismail, look at the attribute that Ibrahim presents. Ismail says, Father, take off your shirt that my blood should not be on your shirt. Father, cover your eyes. It would be difficult for you to see my blood spilled on this earth. Ibrahim presents himself to offer the sacrifice of one child in a way that he himself is worried about the difficulty and protects himself from the apparent nature of that difficulty. And Allah concludes by saying, وَفَدَيْنَاهُ بِذِبْحٍ عَظِيمٍ. And we ransomed him with a great ransom, meaning that the sacrifice was never taken from Ibrahim. Ibrahim didn't have to give his child. He received status even without this sacrifice and the greatness of the sacrifice he offered. But the example of Sayyidah Zainab, that not only is from her family a sacrifice taken, but Imam Rida would elaborate and say, مَا كَانَ مِثْلُهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ, that these were those people that there is no one like them on the face of this earth who presented their sacrifice. One of the differences in the sacrifices of Karbala, and even this event in history, and willing to sacrifice from yourself. Ibrahim wanted to sacrifice. Ibrahim wanted to offer his child for the sake of Allah. But it was difficult for him. But the Shuhada of Karbala were those that they described would run to the battlefield. Ibrahim did not run with Ismail. Ibrahim, when he sees the dream, he asks him, Ismail, what's your opinion? Should we proceed with this path? The example of the Shuhada of Karbala, they were those people who competed with one another to offer their lives in sacrifice. They ran towards Shahad. The idea that we talk about, that Qasim alayhi salam, when he enters the battlefield, he runs to the enemy. He was not the only one. He saw this example before him, that these soldiers and these lovers of Ahlul Bayt would run to Shahad. The example of those that were sacrificed, that there is no example like them. There is no one who would run to Shahadat the way the companions of Imam Hussein. There's a discussion amongst the ulama that says that why did they run to the example of Shahadat? Why did they chase to the example of Shahadat? They look and they say that even Imam Hussein, when he's approached by the angels to say that we've come to help you, Imam Hussein says, take the permission from Allah, not from me. Imam is Hujjah. Imam has the ability. Why does he delay this? And one of the discussions of the ulama is that Allah ransomed the sacrifice of Ibrahim, that the companions of Imam Hussein wanted to ensure that their name was written amongst the shuhada, so they ran to death before Allah could take it away. Before a ransom could be established for them, they wanted to ensure that they attained this great status, and that they attained this proximity to Allah. Sayyidah Zainab is that one who from her family and her own children, not one son, not one brother, all of them she offered. Look at the example, another example of Ibrahim alayhi salam, the fire of Nimrud. When Ibrahim is thrown into the fire, he's alone. There's no one with him. Allah makes it, Ya naru kuni bardan wa salam. That fire became cold and peaceful for Ibrahim, where he went alone. But look at the fire of Sayyidah Zainab. It's not just her who is in that fire, but with the children of Ahlul Bayt, with the women of Ahlul Bayt. Do you know the dhulm that they describe in that fire? You can't imagine. We've never discussed it openly. How is it that they proceeded from the murder of Abu Abdullah to the attacking of the tents? One of the ulama says, he says the logical steps would be this, that first Abu Abdullah took every shaheed back to the tents. They removed the shuhada from the tents and brought them out and laid them under the open sun, that they would be earning their reward with the mal'oon by presenting the desecrated bodies of the shuhada, so they wanted them preserved. Then they would go through the tents and loot the tent of whatever they could take. And as they would take the possessions of the tent, the women would run from one to the other to the other. When they came to the point that they could loot no more because the women would not face them, now they began to burn the tents. They describe and say in this condition that eventually it happens that Sayyidah Zainab and the women surround Imam Zainul Abidin, and they ask the question, O one who is the remainder of what was good before us and one who will be the source of goodness after this event. We have come to the condition now that there is us and there is the enemy. There is no one to protect us anymore, and they have lit the fires in the tents. What is your command? And the Imam says to them that it is mandatory for us to preserve the life and to exit into the desert. What is waiting for them in the desert except an enemy? They exit the fire into the hands of the enemy. One of them, Waraqeen, writes, we saw every woman run from the burning tent, except there was one woman who would stand at the door of a burning tent, and sometimes she would step out and look to her right and her left. Then she would raise her hands in dua, then run back into the tent. In this condition, one of the enemies asks, "O lady, what are you doing? Why do I see you in this character when the others have run? Why do you keep returning back to the fire?" They would say that Sayyidah Zainab would reply, Ma'ana al-alil, we have a sick one with us who does not have the ability to sit up or stand. How can I save my life when there is the remainder of Rasulullah in me? This was the fire of Sayyidah Zainab. If you were to look at the adamat of the fire of Ibrahim, he went alone. Allah made it peaceful. The fire of Sayyidah Zainab burned the feet of the women, killed the children of Ahlul Bayt, and endangered the life of the authority of Allah. You would say that Sayyidah Zainab in this element is greater than Ibrahim as well, the same way Abu Abdullah's sacrifice is greater than Ibrahim. Look at the example of Musa. Musa, Kalim Allah. He is the one who is afflicted by Fir'aun. And it eventually comes to the point that Musa is the one who raises his hands in dua and says, Ya Allah, punish this oppressor. I am done with him. Musa prays against Fir'aun, which causes the punishment of the sea collapsing on Fir'aun. It's the dua of Musa. Yet look at the zalim that is the oppressor of Sayyidina Zayd. That his actions are such that people would wonder that one like this, why does the heaven not fall upon us? They describe and say that one of the companions of Rasulullah, Sa'al Sa'adi, he enters into the provinces of Sham at the time that the Sebaya, the prisoners, are being brought to Sham. He says, I saw Sham decorated in such a way that I had never before. As I was passing through to Bayt al-Maqdis in this journey that I had, I asked the people of Sham, why have you created such decoration? And they replied, they said, we imagine and we worry that the heavens do not fall on top of us. This is why. They reply and say, this Khalifa is celebrating the murder of the grandson of Rasulullah. How could it be that Allah allows us to persist when such dhulm has happened? This is that dhalim who, in his oppression of Sayyidina Zainab, there's a description of the court of Yazid. That Yazid, in the etiquette of the Arab, was that, for example, the mayyit is not brought in front of the women. So when he wanted the head of Imam Hussein brought before him, he took the women and moved them behind the throne of the Khalifa. Sayyidina Zainab and all the women sat behind the throne of the Khalifa. And then the head of Imam Hussein was brought in front of Yazid. The description writes and says that Sayyidina Zainab hears the sound of metal striking someone. She turns to the daughter of Imam Hussein, Fatima, and says, "Oh, my niece, I hear the sounds of metal striking flesh. I am the one to protect your brother Zainul Abidin. Look beyond this throne and see, is your brother safe? What has happened?" They describe and say that Fatima bint al-Hussein stood up, looked, and sat back down crying. Sayyidina Zainab says, "Oh, my child, what did you see?" She says, "Aunt, I can't describe to you what I saw." Sayyidina Zainab would stand up and see that it is not Ali ibn al-Hussein who is being struck, but rather it is the head of Abu Abdullah that Matul is striking with his sword. Yet Sayyidina Zainab, fulfilling the promise that she made to Allah and Imam Hussein, never once asked for the punishment of Allah and the curse of Allah to be sent on this oppressor. Musa could not take the oppression of Fir'aun and he prayed against him, so Allah punished him. But Sayyidina Zainab is that one who followed the example of Abu Abdullah and was patient even in this phase. Look at the example of Isa. Isa is that one who was oppressed by his nation to the extent that they intended to kill him. And when taken prisoner, Allah raises him to heaven before any punishment is meted out or any abuse is meted out from the Bani Israel, and then is replaced with a different person. Isa alayhi salam was never crucified, was never struck, never abused by the people of Bani Israel. Rather, he was lifted from this earth and never faced that challenge. But Sayyidina Zainab is that one who, after the events of Karbala, withstood the abuse of all of the oppressors, who withstood the abuse against their children, who withstood the abuse against the family of the Prophet from the very nation that her grandfather was sent to preserve from the fires of hell. Looking at these examples, we may say that it may not be in the battlefield a sword was raised, but in comparison to the Anbiya, the example of Sayyidina Zainab establishes her superiority as the one who is in service of Islam and is the partner of Imam Hussein in this experience. There is a book written by Ubayd Ali Zainabat. This book is written approximately in 270 after Hijrah. It's one of the oldest books. And Ubayd Ali's book is something that is referenced by all of the ulama after. In his book Zainabat, he describes and he says the oppression and the mazlumiyat of Sayyidina Zainab is such that after the event of Karbala, they did not even let her stay in the city of Medina. Her leaving Medina was because the supporters of Yazid had such animosity towards her and the haqqaniyat that she would explain that they made her leave her home. They oppressed her to the extent that they killed her as a stranger in a foreign land the way they killed Abu Abdullah as a stranger in a foreign land. There's a discussion that till today we don't know much about her life. They hid the reality of Sayyidina Zainab, a life of almost 60 years. And we know moments and flashes of this. The same way they hid the truth and the reality and the fadail of Ali ibn Abi Talib, they hid the attributes of Sayyidah Zainab from us. Goes so far as to say that not only do we not know which land she is buried in, some say Medina, some say Cairo, some say Sham, and within Sham there are many locations. We don't know how she died. There's an argument to say that did she die because of the grief that she experienced in the events of Karbala, or was she poisoned and killed by the Khulafa? There's a discussion that says majority of the women who were present in the field of Karbala died within 1 year to 2 years after the event of Karbala, which points to the reality that it is likely that all of these narrators of the events were killed off by the Banu Umayyah to ensure that the message was not delivered to society. But she is the one who, like her brother, is killed as a stranger amongst strangers, who is killed by the oppression that was meted out on her. But this is definitely the one that we know has a great status in the eyes of Allah, and is the partner of Imam Hussein. She was such a partner that even on the day of Ashura, you saw her as the companion to Imam Hussein. There is a moment in the field of Karbala when Abu Abdullah receives a call from his grown son, Alayka minni salam abata. They describe and say that Abu Abdullah runs into the field after hearing Akbar call him. His partner is the one who calls, Oh Hussein, Ali calls you from the right. I see you run to the left in the battlefield. Abu Abdullah replies, he says, Oh Zainab, find no fault in me. When I heard him call me for the last time, the light of my eyes left me. I don't know where I'm going. In that moment, they describe that Abu Abdullah, we don't know if he walked or crawled, calling to his son Akbar, where are you in this field? They describe and say that this was one of the most difficult moments of Abu Abdullah's life. That son, that when he went to battle, he called out and said, Oh Marisad, what is wrong with you that you killed my lineage? Oh Allah, I am sending against this nation one who was the most like your prophet in nature and behavior and speech. Imam Hussein, when he reaches the body of Akbar, they describe and say, we watch to see how does an old man bid farewell to his grown son. They said, we saw Abu Abdullah reach the body of the child, sit next to him, touch his cheek to the cheek of Akbar. When he could not find relief, we saw Hussein lie on Karbala, lift the body of his son and hold it to his chest. It was in this moment that his partner comes and says, Oh Hussein, I have come to assist you. The dignity of Abu Abdullah called out, Zainab, Hussein is alive, why did you leave the tent? Zainab says, Oh brother, I knew how much we love this child. I imagine your life in danger, so I came to be your partner in this affair. You saw Zainab be the partner. After the Shahadat of Abbas, when Abu Abdullah stands in front of the tent, calls out, Ala hal min nasir yansurna. It is his partner who came to the door of the tent and called out, Brother Hussein, where is my Abbas? I have never heard you call with such pain as long as Abu al-Fadl was alive. Why do you ask for anyone's help when you have Abbas with you? Imam Hussein, not having the words to reply to his sister, he goes to the tent of Abu al-Fadl, they say, and knocks down the pole of the tent. In this Sayyidah Zainab knew the difficulty of her brother. She turns and she says, Oh Baba, I now understand that day that you warned me of. This partner of Imam Hussein was with him in every difficulty. You saw when he was surrounded by the enemy that they were trying to see how do we end the life of this one. When Shimr came to sit on his chest, it was Sayyidah Zainab who called out, Oh Marisad, you are watching as my brother is being killed. Oh Marisad, why don't you stop them? This was the partner of Hussein who ensured that the message of Imam Hussein persisted. She did not do anything for herself as long as the message needed, which is why we say that she's the one in Sham when the heads of the Shuhada were returned. There were 2 heads returned. The women of Sham asked, were these orphans who fought for Hussein? Fizna would reply, these are the sons of Zainab. She weeps for Hussein, she does not cry for herself. That's Sayyidah Zainab preserved the message of Imam Hussein. She remained his partner in the affair until they say she returned to the city of Medina. entered her house, found the silence of her home, sat between the two beds of her sons, and for the first time wept to say, "My children, where has your mother left you?" على رحمة الله وبركاته وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أن ينقلبوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما بأمره ندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم. Tears in your eyes 10 times in color. يا الله 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 يا محمود بحق محمد، يا أعلى بحق علي، يا فاطر السماوات بحق فاطمة، يا محسن بحق الحسن، يا قديم الأحسان بحق الحسن. Ya Allah, with tears in our eyes, accept this small ibadah from us. Ya Allah, give the thawab of this majlis, the marhumin, today's sponsors, and all of our marhumin, and all those mu'mineen who are in need of dua. Ya Allah, we have gathered here with hajat by the right of the tears in our eyes, by the right of the great wasila of Sayyidina Zayd, and fulfill our hajat. Ya Allah, those amongst our families, our community, the mu'mineen who are suffering through sickness and disease, Ya Allah, بحق بمار كربلاء give شفاعة للمؤمنين. Ya Allah, those who are suffering through strife and insecurity and difficulty and oppression in this day and age, Ya Allah, the mu'mineen, Muslimin, wherever they are, give them iman and safety for the sake of Ahlul Bayt. Ya Allah, keep our children on the upright path of Islam. Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman. Make us and our families from the upright supporters of Sahib al-Zaman. Entitle us to the ziyarat of Abu Abdullah in this world, and the shafa'a of Abu Abdullah in the hereafter. Remembering all of our marhumin, those who were with us last year and aren't with us this year, those of our family members, the marhumin of the sponsors, all the mu'mineen who are in need of dua. One surah Fatiha, 3 times surah Ikhlas, with your loudest of salawat ala Muhammad wa
Hay Zainab, hay Sham, 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 hay Sham, hay Zainab, hay Sham, Zainab, 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 Zainab. Zainab, 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 دین کی بقا ہے زینب، دین کی بقا ہے زینب، مرضی خدا ہے زینب، مرضی خدا ہے زینب، اور غم میں مبتلا ہے زینب، غم میں مبتلا ہے زینب، آئے بے ردا ہے زینب، آئے بے ردا ہے زینب، غم میں مبتلا ہے زینب، ہائے بے ردا ہے زینب، 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 اور غمزدہ ہے زینب اور غمزدہ ہے زینب اور بیردا ہے زینب اور بیردا ہے زینب اور غمزدہ ہے زینب ہائے بیردا ہے زینب 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 کربلا سے شام کیا گئی کربلا سے شام کیا گئی آبروئے حق بچا گئی آبروئے حق بچا گئی اور دل کا سرا ہے زینب دل کا سرا ہے زینب بیردا ہے زینب ہائے بیردا ہے زینب دل کا سرا ہے زینب ہائے بیردا ہے زینب 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 مجلس عزائش میرا مجلس عزائش میرا اور دل سے مت حسین کو بلا دل سے مت حسین کو بلا اور بانی عطا ہے زینب بانی عطا ہے زینب ہائے بیردا ہے زینب ہائے بیردا ہے زینب بانی عطا ہے زینب ہائے بیردا ہے زینب 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 اور جس نے اس کا دل دکھا دیا جس نے اس کا دل دکھا دیا اور وہ سزا کا مرتکب ہوا وہ سزا کا مرتکب ہوا اور روح مصطفیٰ ہے زینب روح مصطفیٰ ہے زینب اور ہائے بیردا ہے زینب ہائے بیردا ہے زینب اور روح مصطفیٰ ہے زینب ہائے بیردا ہے زینب 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 حسین 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 حسین
چادر نہ کفن ہے دور دکھا کے
عباس کی بہن کو شامی رلا رہے چادر دکھا دکھا کے
ایک بات کہہ رہی ہے آمدد کو بابا دادی کی طرح میں بھی اب ہو گئی ضعیفہ زخمی کیا ہے پہلو ناقص ظالموں نے مجھ کو گرا گرا کے ایک مٹی گر رہی ہے آمدد کو بابا دادی کی طرح میں بھی اب ہو گئی ضعیفہ زخمی کیا ہے پہلو ناقص ظالموں نے مجھ کو گرا گرا کے
عباس کی بہن کو شامی رلا رہے چادر دکھا دکھا کے عباس کی بہن کو شامی رلا رہے چادر دکھا دکھا
اور میری جو بیوی چلتی نہ تھی زیادہ پردیس میں اپن پر آیا ہے وقت کیسا لائے ہیں شام والے ان شہزادیوں کو پیدل چلا چلا کے
عباس کی بہن کو شامی رلا رہے چادر دکھا دکھا کے
زخموں کی وہ تکلم سعادت جانتے ہیں مہدی کو بھی خبر ہے سجاد جانتے ہیں مارے ہیں کس نے کتنے حیدر کی لاڈلی کو پتھر اٹھا اٹھا کے
عباس کی بہن کو شامی رلا رہے چادر دکھا دکھا کے
رستہ بنا رہی ہے بنت علی کا فیضا کانٹے ہٹا ہٹا کے
عباس کی بہن کو شامی رلا رہے چادر دکھا دکھا کے ہائے ہائے زینب ہائے ہائے شام ہائے ہائے زینب ہائے ہائے شام ہائے ہائے زینب ہائے ہائے شام
اے وفا کہاں ہو بھائی ذرا صدا دو 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 زینب بلا رہی ہے زینب بلا رہی ہے آواز تو سنا دو اے وفا کہاں ہو بھائی ذرا صدا دو اے وفا کہاں ہو بھائی ذرا صدا دو دیکھ تیری بہنیں بازار میں کھڑی ہے
خوشیوں کا چادر کہیں سے لا دو زینب بلا رہی ہے زینب بلا رہی ہے آواز تو سنا دو اے وفا کہاں ہو بھائی ذرا ستا دو اے وفا کہاں ہو بھائی ذرا ستا دو اہل حرم غازی کتنا تجھے پکارا اہل حرم غازی کتنا تجھے پکارا بے چین ہے سکینہ چہرہ اسے دکھا دو زینب بلا رہی ہے زینب بلا رہی ہے آواز تو سنا دو اے وفا کہاں ہو بھائی ذرا صدا دو اے وفا کہاں ہو بھائی ذرا صدا دو ان ظالموں نے تجھ کو سونے نہیں دیا ہے سائے میں تم علم کے کچھ دیر کو سلا دو اے وفا کہاں ہو بھائی ذرا صدا دو اے وفا کہاں ہو بھائی ذرا صدا دو دربار جا رہے ہیں سجاد سالواں ہے دربار جا رہے ہیں سجاد سالواں ہے مصیبتوں میں کچھ حوصلہ بڑھا دو زینب بلا رہی ہے زینب بلا رہی ہے آواز تو سنا دو اے وفا کہاں ہو بھائی ذرا صدا دو اے وفا کہاں ہو بھائی ذرا صدا دو شبیر کے غموں کو اے دور کرنے والے شبیر کے غموں کو اے دور کرنے والے بن کھڑے ہیں آزاد تو کرا دو اے وفا کہاں ہو بھائی ذرا صدا دو
مادر حسین تیرے نام ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے نام ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے زوجہ علی ہے کربلا فاطمہ عظیم ارجمند جس کے آستان پاک کے خود شیان عرش ہے غلام ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے نام ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے نام آؤ فاطمہ او فاطمہ آرزو قلب مصطفیٰ جس کے لاڈلے حسن حسین جس کی بیٹیاں فلک مقام ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے نام ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے نام ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے نام ثانیے جناب سیدہ اللہ اللہ تیرا حوصلہ خوب کی حفاظت حرام بعد قتل سید انام ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے نام ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے نام کٹ رہا تھا فرق شاہدی چل رہا تھا خنجر لگی بی بی آپ دیکھتی رہی مٹ گئے حرم جلے خیام ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے نام ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے نام بی بی ہم اٹھائے ہیں بہت دل پہ داغ کھائے ہیں بہت تجھ پہ اے حسین کی بہار ہو گئی مصیبتیں تمام ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے نام ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے نام کربلا میں اپنے دل ربا کر دیے حسین پر فدا اور محمد جلی ہو گئے شہید تشنکام ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے نام ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے نام میتیں پڑی ہیں بے کفن کیا کرے حسین کی بہار بے کسی اور ایسی بے کسی شام اور کربلا کی شام ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے نام ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے نام حق امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین وہ عابد بیمار
تھا وہ عابد بیمار تھا چلنے سے جو لاچار تھا چلنے سے جو لاچار تھا اور شام کا بازار تھا اور شام کا بازار تھا اور مصطفیٰ کی بیٹیاں مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین شبیر کی وہ لاڈلی شبیر کی وہ لاڈلی سینے پہ جوش ہے کہ پلی سینے پہ جوش ہے کہ پلی جس کی آواز من میں چلے جس کی آواز من میں چلے اوپر تماشوں کے نشان مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام یا حسین یا حسین مولا حسین مولا حسین مولا حسین مولا حسین مولا حسین مولا حسین
السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك حبيب الله السلام عليك أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب عليه الصلاة والسلام السلام عليك فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين السلام عليك إمام حسن المجتبى عليه الصلاة والسلام السلام عليك أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت بقي الليل والنهار ولا جاره الله آخر له مني لزيارتكم والسلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين السلام عليكم يا أميرة المسلمين علي بن الحسين محمد بن علي وجعفر محمد المسلم بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى محمد بن علي وعلي محمد الحسن بن علي السلام عليك سلام العسر والزمان السلام عليك شريف القرآن السلام عليك خليفة الرحمن السلام عليك إمام الإنس والجن أجر الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك ودخولك وجعل من أنصارك وأنصارك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته اللهم كن لوليك حجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آله في